So my name is Markku Heikkila. I am currently the director of men's programs for City Team Oakland. My home church is the Hope Church in Atwater, California. It's a wonderful church. My life hasn't always been great. I grew up, my childhood wasn't horrific, but there's a lot of things that happened that kind of left an empty spot in me. I dealt with insecurity for a long time, with anxiety, with depression. My parents have split at an early age, and my mom had some issues and my dad had some issues, and I kind of bounced in between. I've never felt that sense of security. It ended up getting better later on in my life, but unfortunately those feelings kind of just carried on with me for 31 years. Around my teenage years, I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol. My life was chaotic at a young age, and that's what I kind of made my norm. So being normal for me was being in situations that weren't normal at all. So I kind of gravitated to the streets and for people whose lives were similar to mine, because that's what I felt like where I needed to be. Obviously, drugs and alcohol played a big part in that. I remember taking my first drink and using for the first time, and I felt accepted. I felt all those things that I struggled with for a long time just kind of disappear. And I made that my solution to all my problems from a young age of 12, 13 years old. Unfortunately, I would use that as a method of solving my issues for the next 2 decades, for 20 years. I was able to get through high school with the help of a family, constantly in trouble. Every opportunity that I had to do the right thing, I ended up choosing to do the wrong thing. I didn't realize how much support I actually had to graduate from high school until after graduation, and my perception of reality was really messed up. I had no idea what it was to be a man. I had no idea what it was to have a job, to have stability. I had my own understanding of what my life was supposed to look like, and unfortunately took me down a really dark path. I started experimenting with cocaine at 18, progressively got worse. I had something like 25 different jobs, 30 different jobs from 18 to 24 years old. It was weird because I never had a sense of worth. I never had a sense of belonging. Even when things were going well, I never felt like I deserved it, and I would sabotage myself. 25, I met my wife. We got married. We had my beautiful daughter, which is 10 now. And I remember doing everything right for a time. We bought a house, we had the cars, we had the white picket fence, American dream. And I remember looking around and feeling like this wasn't my life. Like I shouldn't be here. You know, I had all these great things in my life, but I didn't feel like I did anything in my life to deserve what I had. And I couldn't see that at the moment, but later on down the road, after I lost everything, I could see that I completely sabotaged the situation. After I lost my wife and my daughter due to drugs and alcohol, I fell into even a deeper depression. I got stuck in this cycle that I didn't want to live, but I was too scared to die, and all my problems revolved around drugs and alcohol, except my only solution was drugs and alcohol. So it was a cycle that it was impossible to get out of. I started being homeless. I started using heroin. I started using Oxycontin, crystal meth. I tried a couple recovery programs here locally, but they never worked out. They gave us education on substance abuse, but there was a huge factor that was missing, which was a Christian-based program and the God aspect. I ended up incarcerated a few times, living on the streets, stealing from stores just to be able to eat. And I just completely alone and desperate. And In jail, the last time that I was there, I heard about this program, and it was a faith-based program. And I was granted the opportunity to be able to go to the program. And when I got there, it was good. It was everything I was kind of looking for. I had 45 days sober, but once again, I didn't feel like I deserved anything good in my life. And once again, the pattern continues. You know, once it's going right, you hit the self-sabotage button and explode. And the problem is, if you don't love yourself, you don't know how to love others. And if you don't love yourself, anybody that's trying to love you, you're pushing them away. You have this sense of vulnerability from a young age that everybody's going to disappoint you. So you need to disappoint them or detach from them before you feel that hurt and that pain again. I had so many borders around and walls up around my heart and around who I was. I didn't even know who I really was. I didn't have any identity. My identity was whoever I was around at that time and whoever I needed to pretend to be to get what I needed to get. I ended up leaving that program after 45 days, and I really wish I would have stayed, but it turned into the worst 9 months of my life. I was homeless in Modesto. Once again, I remember being at a point where I believed that not having contact with my family and not being with my daughter and not talking to my ex-wife at the time, that was the best thing that I could possibly do for them. That I felt that as a favor and for everything that they'd done for me, the best conclusion that I came up was just not be part of their life. Due to some circumstances, 8 months down the road, 8.5 months down the road, I had to come make contact with Modesto Homicide because they actually believed that I was dead. There had been a missing persons report put out on me, and the Modesto Homicide told me that I should reach out to my family because they were freaking out because they thought that I was dead, like I said. And so I called them and I talked to them, and they wanted to see me. And we went out to dinner that night, and I was so filthy and so dirty and so high and so drunk that I was barely coherent. And I remember sitting next to my daughter at a Marie Callender's, and my daughter had always been a huge part of my life when I could, and I loved her, and I always wanted to have kids, and she's never done anything wrong, and just always happy just to be around me. I remember looking at her and her not even recognizing who I was, and I remember her feeling extremely uncomfortable and looking across the table at my ex-wife at the time, and basically asking her like for help, like, who is this guy, you know? And I had wrote a note on a napkin saying that they were better off without me. And I was flipped it over and I told them I was going to go to the bathroom, and that was just going to be it. That was going to be my last time I saw them. I was going to go on a suicide mission and drink and use until I died. And that was the purpose of my life. And I made it to the lobby and I just got stuck. And I remember just hearing, like, when are you going to go back to your beautiful family? When are you going to go back to your beautiful family? And I didn't know what to do. I mean, I literally just froze up. I can't remember any other time in my life where I froze up like that. I couldn't move. And I went back, and they had read the note, and my ex-wife was crying, and I start crying, and my daughter had started crying, and I told them to just get out of there, you know, just leave. And I was frustrated, not with them, not angry with them. It was just, I couldn't believe my life had gotten to that point, that it was just that unmanageable. That my own daughter that I had spent 4 years with, and didn't even recognize who I was. I remember leaving and walking down a busy road and doing that, oh, if there's a God, show me, and here's your chance, and you know, I grew up in the church and I knew of God, but I didn't know what it was to follow God. I didn't know what it was to truly be a Christian. I never really surrendered my life. And I literally walked down the road for about 1.5 miles, 2 miles, doing everything that I could to get arrested to prove that God wasn't real and that he didn't care, and kicking cars and pulling car handles, and nothing happened to me. Absolutely nothing happened to me. I still can't believe it to this day. I mean, I try to do everything. And I remember getting to where I was going and just breaking down, crying, and calling my family and telling them that I was ready. And 2 days later, they picked me up, and I ended up going to a program in Oakland. And I still didn't have hope. I really thought that I was going to be able to get drugs and alcohol, get off drugs and alcohol, put on some weight, and go to prison without a habit. I mean, that was my highest expectations for myself at that point. Maybe I'll make it 2 weeks, maybe I'll make it 3 weeks. And, this is just the same thing over again. It's going to have the same results, and something truly amazing happened there. I remember being there for like 2 months, and it seems like as much as I was trying to get kicked out and not follow structure there, somebody would show me grace. Somebody would show me some love. And it wasn't much, but it was just enough to keep me there. And now I see that God was using them as his vessel for a bigger plan. And about 2 months into the program, I was so exhausted about trying to control everything and about what everybody else was doing, and just being sick and tired of trying to have control of my life, and coming to that realization that all my best ideas had landed me in a rehab in Oakland, out of all places, at 31 years old. And I remember I prayed that night because all these Christians around me were telling me how magnificent prayer is, and you need to pray, and all this stuff. And I literally had no other options besides to pray that night. I would have tried anything. And I prayed, and it wasn't a lightning bolt moment or anything like that. But something changed that night. Something absolutely changed that night. I remember just going downstairs the next day, and we had to serve the community in the kitchen, and we also run a homeless shelter. And I remember, like, God just started giving me subtle things, like, hey, Markku, you're one bad decision from being on the other side of that door, from being the one serving to being one that has to be served again. It was weird. It's like I was a cook there, and I started seeing things like, if I'm gonna make a meal, might as well make a meal the best meal that I possibly can make, and because this might be the last meal that some of these community members get, or that might be the only meal that they get for a day. So I started making the best meals that I possibly could, and I started really feeling good. It's weird. You could be so broken, but yet serve somebody else, and now all of a sudden you have self-worth again. It doesn't matter what material possessions you have. It doesn't matter what your past was. It doesn't matter where you're from or any of that stuff. Like, you literally have a chance to serve somebody else and then show them love and kindness that they're not expecting, and it helps you. Like, it's mind-boggling. Like, in the world that we live, like Romans 12:2, don't conform to the patterns of this world. Well, the patterns of this world is to get as much as you can, and to be as greedy as you possibly can, and do whatever it takes to make it to the top. That is the society that we live in, but that's not what God wants us to do. It's the more that we help others, the better off that everybody is. And it seems the more I helped other people, the better that my life was getting, which is a completely insane concept for the world that we live in, you know? And it's weird because like the scriptures, we have Bible study every morning, and you know, I could never look up Matthew chapter 2. Like I didn't even know how to look up scripture, but after I had prayed, you know, like the stories in the Bible and what Jesus was talking about were actually resonating with me. It was like the words were popping out of the page, and I could finally understand it. Before, I had no understanding of what I was reading, and it was like the Bible was black and white, and it was that gray area that had me lost for 31 years of my life. It was my own understanding. Like you tell me that I could have opened up this book and it tells me how to live my life, to be able to correct all the bad behavior that I did and to be redeemed and forgiven. And there was a blueprint for it, and all I had to do was open up one book. I would have done that a long time ago, you know, but God gave me an opportunity to be restored, and at that moment, and I'm extremely glad that I took it, you know. And then on top of it, you got Bible stories of people that were just as messed up as me, and then all of a sudden they're with Jesus and working for God's kingdom. Like it really made me believe that I had a chance, you know, and they did amazing things for the kingdom, you know. And there was some hope. There was absolutely a glimmer of hope. And it's weird, those relationships that I had built with some of the community members back then, that was 6 years ago, are still my friends today, you know. And I work in a place, or a city team, the program, it was a place where I could just walk out the front door and be able to help somebody. It was like God was just setting me up for success. Like all I literally had to do was walk out of my room, walk down a flight of stairs, and there was an opportunity to help somebody else. I remember somebody had asked me 3 months into the program what I wanted to do with my life, and I had no idea. But at that moment, I gave an answer. Never had put that much thought into it. I was just trying to survive at this point still. And I told them that I wanted to be an intern for the program, that I wanted to be a program manager, and that I wanted to open up my own program back home. When I told that person what I had said, they looked shocked, but I probably looked even more shocked because I had no idea. And there's probably some shock in my face too, because I was 3 months sober and I had no idea how I was going to do that. I had absolutely no idea. But I knew that there's some really key verses, you know, like everything that I did in Colossians 3:23 that I actually learned at this church, The Hope, when I was like 6 years old. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for man. And I'm like, okay, I could do that, you know what I mean? And so I got a job flipping hot dogs at 32 years old, but I was gonna flip that hot dog better than anybody's ever flipped it, because I was flipping it for the Lord, you know? And I was just grateful for an opportunity to be working again, and things start getting better. Slowly, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you. All right, I'm cool with that. Like, let's do it, you know, and I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Like, all these verses start coming up, and it's like every time I hit a hurdle, there would be something new, or like God would just give me one little nugget just to get over that one hurdle, and then another little nugget, and then another nugget. And there's just a lot of stuff. Like, God surrounded me with such great people, and it was like to a point where was I finally going to start taking their advice? Was I going to make eye contact with them when they're teaching class? Was I going to stay a little bit extra if I didn't understand something? You know, like God has constantly sent people that have gotten me to this point. They're angels. They're like guardian angels. Like everything that I've ever needed or struggled with, God seems to send the right person at the right time to speak to me with what's going on. And I ended up graduating the program, which was a huge accomplishment. And I was offered the internship. So I was like, hey, I want to be an intern, a program manager, and open my own program. So here's the first step. So here is the internship. And so 1 year after I got there, I was able to be an intern, and I was put in a role as a house manager to help out all the clients in the house. And I absolutely loved it. I never was able to figure out what I was good at for all those years of my life. It was like, how are you supposed to go talk to a counselor or whatever saying that I'm too nice to be a drug dealer, but I'm too rough to live in society? Like, what am I, what kind of jobs are there, you know? And in the internship, I found out that what God blessed me with was the position that I was at. Like, God gave me all these qualities, and it was to be able to help the other guys coming through the program. I ended up doing the internship for a year. It was only supposed to be 6 months, and it turned into another 6 months. And then my 5-year goal was to be a program manager. And funny how things work out. Everybody that worked at that program left. So the only person that was still there was Markku. So they made me the program manager by God's divine calling, but it was also like out of default because nobody else was there. But you know, it's crazy because I had no experience besides 1 year of being an internship, 2 years removed from being homeless, you know, but God called me to be the program manager of that program that I was at. It doesn't matter what your qualifications are. It doesn't matter how many trainings you've done. If God wants you to do something, you better buckle up and go, because He's going to open up the doors for you. And you know it's not you. You know it's only God, because so many situations have to happen and present themselves in order for you to get to that spot. And it happens like that. Like when you're trying to do it yourself, you just keep bumping your head on the door. Well, obviously that door is closed for a reason. So why don't you step back and wait for God to open up the door that you're supposed to walk through? And it's just about being patient and being just being patient and sitting still and letting God do what He's going to do. And when it's time, you go. And when it's not time, you sit. And you're grateful to do what you could do each day. And so I was a program manager with all these really experienced people from all these other sites with doctorate degrees, and the insecurity crept up on me really bad. And the anxiety that I was feeling again crept up on me. But somebody told me one of the most amazing things is the devil always uses the same tricks. How many times are you going to fall for him? And I was like, whoa, that's deep. Because here I am, everything's going right, and then the enemy uses something that crippled me for decades. You know what I mean? And finally, God has put me in a position the position that He called me into, and here comes the anxiety and the fear and all that again. And we're right back to childhood. And I'm glad that I was able to spot it. And I'm glad that I was able to see that God didn't put me in that position because of who I was at that moment, but because of who I was going to be in the future. And with that, we have to be faithful, you know. Give us, God trusts us with a little thing before He could give us more, you know. And so I continue to go to school. You know, I continue to save money. I continue to work on my house. I continue to read the Bible. I continue to ask mentors and pastors and anybody that would answer my questions. I would get information from them, because I'm not so naive that I believe that I'm doing it better than anybody else. There's always somebody that's doing it better and that already has the experience. And God kept putting those people into my life. And I'm still going to school now, 5 years or 4 years later, but I do have my certificate for drug and alcohol counseling, level 2. I'll be going for my LDAC in the beginning of next year, which is the highest highest level certificate that you could get for drug and alcohol counseling. And I just stayed faithful. And in this time, God restored everything in my life. It was as soon as I surrendered at 2 months in the program and I did that prayer and started following and being obedient. Once I let go of everything, that's when I got everything back. It didn't make any sense to me. My ex-wife came back into my life. We actually got remarried. My daughter, I'm a part of her life. It's just a blessing to be there, and I'm grateful that there wasn't anything that any kind of situations that I put her in that harmed her to this day. She doesn't have any side effects from what I did when I was in my drug use and alcohol use. I've saved up enough money. I was able to purchase a home 2 months ago. So in August 2020, I'll be opening up a sober living home in Merced. Already have the location. I'm really excited. It's going to be a faith-based home. And there's some people that are in the program in Oakland that are going to come down here also and help set the culture. And there's a lot of people in Atwater that had to go to that program because there wasn't enough resources here. And I'm grateful that God opened up that door, that we could bring people there and that they could get restored and have the same experience as me, but a lot of them want to come back here. So I want to be able to emulate, copy what's going on over there and bring it to Atwater. And there's a lot of factors that go on with that. You know, obviously the housing, curriculum, but they have to be of service also. So it's been great that we've been able to partner up with the Hope Church. We do outreach the last Saturday of every month. The goal would be to be able to take somebody off the street and to be able to put them in the house and to be able to help them get their life in order. Another main part of it is employment, and we started some small jobs so that we'd be able to offer employment to the men that are coming into the program here, to be able to learn the importance of a work ethic and financial responsibility. So you have stability for them to get their lives back, plus serving the Lord, plus being a part of a good church, and surrounding them with community, like spiritual mentors and AA sponsors, and just helping them walk through what many of us already walked through, and let them know that's okay. And when I was in jail 6 years ago, I remember like the detoxes and the resources and the programs. You know, you went to jail to detox. That's Merced County's detox. You know, the goal is to eventually have a detox one day. And I would love to open up a women's program in 2021 to be able to offer the same services as we will to the men in August of 2020. And just see where God takes it. And just continue to be obedient, continue to be faithful, continue to be a good steward of what God gives me, because it's not mine. God is giving it to me temporarily to be able to help other people, and I see that. When people tell me, you know, oh, Markku, you just decided to make the right decision and you got your life in order, I have to explain to them that I tried. I tried for 20-something years to get my life in order, and it wasn't until I gave my life to God that everything started to get better. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak today. I'm grateful for whoever watches this. I hopefully it resonates with somebody. If you're struggling, just know that there's hope. I've been in the same place. You can reach out to the Hope Church. You can reach out to me. There's a way, there's a better way. It's okay. And thank you for letting me speak today.